The morning trade, Indian markets continued to trade lower and close on a flattish note with a negative bias amid a slew of macroeconomic numbers that came out. The PMI, manufacturing PMI numbers came out, which showed that manufacturing activity has eased and it's at a 3-month low, as well as there was some earning disappointments. Now at close, Sensex was down about 0.1%, as you can see on the screen, at 19,733.5 levels. Meanwhile, Nifty was down about 0.1 at 19,733 levels. Now,
so
Nifty
quickly, could you walk towards me, perhaps? Nifty
touched an intraday high of 19,795 today and an intraday low of 19,704 today, Shweta. Now, the broader markets outperformed benchmarks, as has been the case over the past few weeks. Nifty mid-cap index, as you can see, closed on a flattish note at with gains of about 0.03%, and Nifty small-cap index continued to outperform with gains of about 0.68%.
All right, and which sectors were you tracking this morning?
So Shweta, in the morning, most of the sectors barring Nifty Realty were trading in the green. Now the trend reversed over the course of the session, and most sessions actually ended with with losses today. Now among the major losers on the street was the auto index, which again was one of the top gainers. It was down about 0.12%. Nifty PSU Bank, which has been, as we know, we have been tracking it, has been one of the biggest drivers of the recent rally, was down 0.52%. Nifty Realty was down 1.77%. Meanwhile, Nifty IT was a top gainer today, and it rose about 1.2%. Now, among individual stocks, Shweta,
before we move on, what's driving Nifty IT?
Shweta, we saw some corrections after a disappointing set of numbers of earnings that came out from the heavyweights, IT heavyweights, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, and you also saw them slashing their guidance. So we saw a moderate correction in IT stocks, but as the market is pairing sectoral gains, so Nifty IT seems to be like on the radar of investors right now.
All right, Subhash, and what were the earnings that we were tracking since morning? We talked about Adani Total Gas. That, of course, is one of the earnings that was in your radar. Quickly run us through the numbers, please.
So Shweta, Adani Total Gas, the numbers were pretty decent, but it doesn't seem like the investors were too impressed because the stock ended in the negative. Now let's go through the numbers quickly. The net profit was up 8.5% year on year, from 138.4 crore to 150.2 crore. Now revenue, on the other hand, was marginally up at about 1.3% year on year, from 1,042.3 crores to 1,056.1 crores. Now EBITDA margin jumped 250 basis points from 21% to 23.5%, and EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization, was up 13.3% from 218.6 crore to 247.8 crores.
All right, and another major earning that we're tracking is PVR Inox. How's the theatre business doing?
So Shweta, PVR Inox did beat the street estimates, although the company did post a loss for the quarter ended June, but the magnitude of loss wasn't as bad as the street had expected. Now net profit fell, net loss I should say, was about 81.6% from a profit of 53 crores. Now the street was expecting a figure of about 94 crore rupees, a loss of 94 crore rupees. Now revenue, on the other hand, was up 33% from 981 crores to 1304 crores, and this was majorly because of the Hollywood movies doing very well. Although the Indian movies did not perform as well, but the Hollywood movies did help PVR Inox post 33% jump in revenue. Now EBITDA, on the other hand, improved slightly by 3.24% to 352.5 crore from 341.7 crore, while margin declined, Shweta, from about 34.8% in Q1 FY23 to 27%. Now this is a decline of about 78 basis points.
Yes.
Now one of the things that we also need to see that with the average ticket price, Shweta, average ticket price on a quarter-on-quarter basis went up 2.9% from 244 to 246. Now spends per head also surged by 9.2% from 129 in the previous quarter to about 130 rupees in this quarter. And because of this beat, PVR stock also saw a slight uptick after the results came out, and it ended with gains of about 0.7%.
All right, a flattish ending there for PVR Inox, but all in all, market reading those in that piece of information and those news items positively. Suyash, thanks very much for joining. But before I let you go, let me quickly also ask you to run us through the top gainers and losers on Dalal Street today.
So Shweta, among the top gainers was Coal India. Coal India reported a good set of 13.4% jump in production in July at about 58.6 metric tons. So the stock was up about 5.21%, as you can see. NTPC continues to be a top gainer for multiple sessions now. It's up about 3%. Tech Mahindra, which was also trading in a positive territory and was about 1%.
So two tech stocks there, HCL Tech and Tech Mahindra.
And as you can see, IT stocks was the outperformer. The Nifty IT index jumped 1%, whereas other major sectoral indices posted losses in today's session. So as we can see, Tech Mahindra, HCL and HCL Tech were the two IT majors that movers, and were also featured in the top gainers in the Nifty pack. Now on the other hand, if we can bring up the losers, Power Grid Corporation continued to bleed. It was down 5.17% today. Hero MotoCorp was down about 3.24%. Apollo Hospitals was down 2.64%. Adani Ports, which has given a return of about 5% in the month gone by, saw some profit booking and was down about 1.65%. And Bajaj Finserv, which was also among the top losers in the morning trade, was down about 1.58%.
All right. It's interesting to mention Hero MotoCorp. Power Grid, we know, is down on the back of abysmal results. But Hero MotoCorp, just about a couple of hours ago, we were given to understand that ED has raided Pawan Munjal. Currently the CEO for Hero MotoCorp, and that perhaps could be a trigger for why the stock took a beating. In fact, Hero MotoCorp stock saw the worst fall since the start of this year.
In fact, that was the case. Right after the news broke, the stock plummeted and it corrected by about 4% today. So I think that was certainly one of the major reasons why the stock underperformed in today's session, Shweta.
All right. Remember, this is by the way of information that is coming in, breaking in the wires at this point in time. Enforcement Directorate raided residence of Pawan Munjal, chairman of the company. The raid was initiated taking cognizance of a Directorate of Revenue Intelligence case. The searches were carried out in premises in Delhi, Gurugram, in accordance with the PMLA laws, which is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Stock there took a beating, down by approximately 3%. On Dalal Street. Thanks very much, Suyash, for joining us with your inputs on that story. We will continue to bring all the updates from Dalal Street every day in the morning, and of course during the closing session in the afternoon. But we're going to move on for now. GST evasions have become a major challenge for the government. Goods and Service Tax authorities detected evasions worth 1.32 lakh crore in 15,500 cases in 22-23 financial year, an increase of approximately 44% over the previous financial year. Now, evasions worth 14,302 crores were detected in 2,784 cases during April to May alone this year. Now, this of course as per data shared by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in a question responding in Lok Sabha. The GST department is taking a number of anti-evasion measures, which include using robust data, analytics, artificial intelligence to identify and track risky taxpayers. In fact, former West Bengal Finance Minister Amit Mitra wrote a letter to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman alleging that GST frauds are proliferating across the country and MSMEs are facing a major problem due to a web of regulations. We are trying to understand what is leading to increased cases of GST evasions, GST fraud. To discuss that, who better than Subhash Chandra Garg, the former Finance Secretary, joining us on the show at this point in time. Mr. Garg, thank you for taking time out. What explains these evasions, sir? Mr. Garg, can you hear me?
Don't think he can.
I don't think Mr. Garg can.
Mr. Garg, can you hear us?
All right. I don't think he can. We'll come back to him. But
Yes.
interesting figures there. A high number of GST evasions. Obviously, government trying to also put their finger on who are these people trying to evade taxes? There have been at least 28 arrests made so far. So
Right.
punitive action as well as action by the way of, trying to get that money back that many of these entities have so far evaded by the way of taxes, Krishna.
Right, and this comes on the back of us doing story after story about the number of fake GST accounts in this country. So there's, I'm just trying to understand, if there's any impact of those fake GST accounts on the amount of GST evasions that these numbers have thrown up. But clearly, worrisome numbers over there, and the fact that arrests have been made makes it clear that the problem has been existent for a while now, and I think the crackdown has begun on these GST evasions. Wondering how, because once you get a GST number, it becomes incumbent upon you to file a return every month, and the moment you don't file that return every month, you get penalized for it as well. So how is it possible? What is the chinks in the system per se, where it is even possible for people to evade GST? Where exactly is the system wrong in identifying people's actual revenues made via through their GST numbers, and what they're not paying to the government, or what they do? In my sense, I have a feeling that if you see that there is a total number of GST accounts that are available in India, and they're supposed to pay an X amount of tax every year. My question is that database right? Are we even looking at the right number of GST accounts in the country when we know it for a fact that you can fake your Aadhaar and your PAN card to get your GST account?
Which is, by the way, a criminal offence.
Yes.
To fake your Aadhaar and PAN card. I want to quote slightly from what Mr. Mitra wrote in his letter to the Finance Minister, and he said, out of the 69,426 GST identification numbers verified during the last 2 months, 20,000 were found to be non-existent. So essentially alluding to the fact that these are fraudulent registrations that have been done solely to avoid taxes. Another interesting point that he mentions is that out of the 1.4 crore businesses registered with GST, only 0.42% of registered taxpayers were actually verified. So you've got a very few number of actual taxpayers who have also registered their business, which means that increasingly shocking 30% of non-existent and fraudulent registrations were discovered in the last 1 year. Those are some very staggering, difficult figures to digest.
There you go.
It essentially means
people
that
commit a criminal offence to set up a GST account. You're telling me that those people will be willing to pay taxes that are actually due? No wonder there are so many evasions already. What is worrisome is that already there are just about 69,000 GST accounts, out of which you're seeing a good fraction of it, not a very small fraction, a good portion of it, which is fake. So to me, the problem lies over there. You start fixing it from there. You sort of finally get an idea of how much evasion is taking place and how much you can plug the leaks in the system when it comes to getting the money from the taxpayer.
Okay, and it's not just the people who are trying to find innovative ways to not pay taxes, it's also how difficult it is to comply with the regulation. Now, another interesting figure that comes into fore is how complex GST is for MSMEs. As many as 770 notifications have been issued so far, which essentially means that the regulation is tweaked almost couple of times every year, which makes it extremely difficult for various industries. And we're looking at data there. Perhaps you can run us through this data, Krishna, how difficult it becomes for any of these industries, from your cancer drugs to your movie ticket.
This is what is reminding me of the times how your Gharka address used to change in the 80s, 90s, when they kept changing the numbers of the streets and changing the names of the streets. It's one of those things where the new announcement keeps coming up so often that it's very difficult to figure out what is old and what is new rate. It's good that we have these graphics on our screens, which clearly tells you what the new rate is and what the previous rate was. We still have no surety if this will remain where it is, and what's the next iteration going to be. Be that as it may, the fact of the matter is that the high levels of evasion of GST also comes on the back of the high levels of collections that we're witnessing with GST. Fact of the matter is that GST collections have been beating estimates and expectations on a regular basis. So there's no reason to be alarmist at this stage, to be really honest, Shweta, about these GST evasion numbers. What is important is to figure out the fact that yes, there is a lacuna in the system that where you are finding people not just faking their own GST accounts, but also finding ways to not pay the tax that they are due to pay to the government.
In fact, rates of more than 400 items of goods and services across 100 categories, not less than 100, that's triple digit categories have been changed till date since GST was introduced.
Well,
so, you know, the problem here essentially is, Krishna, by the time you understand the taxation,
right.
for example, if I am a company that is in the business of fisheries, by the time I understand how much tax I am to pay,
yeah.
the tax slab gets revised,
Yeah.
and it gets revised. And not just that, compliance it becomes increasingly difficult by the way of how complex the paperwork is,
Fair enough.
which is why MSMEs have not been able to cope up.
Absolutely. Monthly filing of returns for GST, which is being made compulsory, and now, you know, you get phone calls if you don't file your GST on time, and there is a late payment fee as well. So monthly filing of GST returns in itself adds to the paperwork and to the process and the procedure. So we begin over there. So compliance, there are challenges to compliance, but what we have to understand is that GST has been on a journey ever since it was first introduced. There have been improvements, there have been changes. Bear in mind, if you're saying that so many changes are there, check with the guys who are doing online gaming. They would want a change in the last slab that they got. They got 28%, the highest sin tax possible. So, you know, the fact that it's fluid, the fact that it's changing, in a way, I would see it as dynamic. The fact that the feedback is being taken, and then they're trying to figure out, you know, what needs to be taxed absolutely at the highest slab, and what can be, you know, you can let go of. So many of them that we just saw on the graphics, if you can pull them again, 0% GST right now, from what they used to be, from 18% to 5%, from 12% to 0%. So those variations, in a sense, are good. This is taking in feedback. Cancer drugs, 0, thank you. Medicines and food for special medical purposes, 0, thank you. Private satellite launch services, 0%, thank you. Food and beverages purchased along with movie tickets, 5%, oh, thank you very much, you know how much I love the movies. There you go. Fish soluble paste, 5%, uncooked, unfried snack pellets, 5%, 18%. I mean, they're helping us snack, you know, as much as we want to, you know, and helping us watch movies and snack with some good popcorn over there as well.
As happy as you are, I'm not sure if Mr. Garg, who's joining us back, is very happy with those numbers. But I think something that perhaps a lot of us can draw from, you know, you've been in the administration, perhaps draw from your knowledge of how to work around GST evasions. I think it's a major problem for the government. What is your suggestion?
Are you asking me?
It is for you,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
We don't have the wealth of knowledge that you do.
So let me hear your question again. I wasn't really...
Right. My question to you is, as a former finance secretary, what would your advice be to the finance minister who is currently perhaps having a difficult time working around GST evasions?
See, my sense is that GST, in terms of the revenue performance, is doing reasonably well, though not as spectacularly as it was doing last year. You saw the numbers which came today, 1.65 lakh crore, which is about 11% higher than the same year last year. So performance is, tax performance is just all right, nothing great about it. But there are bigger problems around the issues which are to be resolved by the GST Council and the Ministry of Finance. For example, how do you handle this gaming tax, which is a problem? There are a lot of issues.
Mr. Garg, I'll come to gaming tax and I'll come to other teething issues. They continue to be teething issues for some reason, even as GST has become an adult. But I want to talk specifically about GST evasion, sir. Some data that we have pulled up, and this is coming from Finance Minister, data that the Finance Minister has shared in Lok Sabha, alluding to evasions worth 1.32 lakh crore in financial year 22-23, an increase of 44%. It appears that entities, people who are filing these GST, filing the registrations and the taxes, are coming up with new innovative ways to avoid paying up the taxes.
See, there are three layers of issues over there. The first layer of issue is what the Finance Ministry claims, that they have detected evasion, and then the second layer is when they go out, issue notices, what people or the businesses confirm, and then they determine that this is actually the evasion. And finally, you recover.
Are you saying the actual number could be far higher than this? Because this is what the government said.
Far lower than this.
Far lower?
the number which is claimed to have been detected is far higher than the number which is actually determined finally as tax evaded, and then there is still much lower realization of the supposedly evaded tax. So I don't think we should be too much concerned about this kind of claim that there is very widespread. I by no means am suggesting that the GST loopholes should not be plugged in. I'm also not suggesting at all that those who practice fake invoicing or claim fake input credit, etc., should be dealt with soft hands, nothing at all. But the real collection of the GST from this is much smaller than what the impression goes around. That I computed, I think I wrote once a piece that is not even 1% of what the GST collection is. So we should not go out of the way and give it a disproportionate kind of image that there is so widespread evasion in the country.
Okay.
Right, fair enough. The only thing I want to ask you is that we're also talking about evasions at a time when there's so much headlines about the number of fake GST accounts. People faking Aadhaar cards and PAN cards to get fake GST numbers. 20,000 odd GST accounts are non-existent. That's the latest data. That is a concern. That's where, in a sense, all of this begins and ends up as evasion of taxes eventually.
So there are again two basic issues. Number one, since we have a system of GST in the country where there is a large scale sort of exemption for small businesses. So, and then there is also compounding facilities available to another good set of number of the businesses there. Of the GST, registered GST dealers, about 1.4 crore or so, whereas the total business is over 8 crore. So a large number of businesses operate in the country without being part of the GST network. And of those who are registered, they also then have this compounding and other kind of practices which allow them not to be part of a very robust GST chain. As a result, it so happens that there are people who, by using these opportunities of compounded tax and other, issue the GST invoices which may turn out to be fake, or obtain the fake registration numbers. There is also an issue connected with the what today is coming out as the electronic businesses who don't have a fixed place to work, etc. And therefore, in a traditional, stricter sense, they may not be the existing businesses, but they are not. The fact that we have so much of GST filing and we have so many of
I think from what you're trying to allude, sir, and for the benefit of our viewers, just to break it down from your very difficult parlance to an easier one, it's becoming difficult for businesses to comply. And correct me if I'm wrong, if that's what you're alluding to, it's becoming difficult for businesses to comply given how complex the structure is. And something that your perhaps former colleague, the former finance minister of West Bengal, Amit Mitra, has also written to the current finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, about that it is becoming MSMEs who are falling through the crack because they are not able to comply with the existing norms. In fact, we have the letter that is written where he talks about GST frauds proliferating across the country, penetrating each and every state. And in fact, on the other hand, regulation is so overpowering for MSMEs that they are on the verge of deregistering. Do you agree with that statement?
That statement is partially correct in my judgment. While electronic infrastructure and framework which has been created in GST is a fabulously efficient and good one. You would believe me, this operates flawlessly, it operates very well. But then there are large number of GST registered as well as those who are not in the GST system, who have to operate manually. For example, today, I think less than 5 crores turnover guys are not required to generate business-to-business electronic invoices. So as a result, they operate under a system where what Mr. Mitra or Dr. Mitra was referring to, they have to do enormous amount of manual kind of work, filing of forms, etc., returns and other things, which is too difficult and onerous for them. I think it would require for us to move towards a system where everyone, including the small businesses, comes on the electronic platform and they are enabled to work effortlessly as part of so whenever somebody takes a payment, the system can be so simple, electronic system, that you generate the invoice automatically. This can be done. It happens abroad. It happens in many countries. So if we sort of make, which seemingly looks like a difficult thing to do, that you bring so many small businesses into the GST network, but which actually is the solution, not them. So the ask there is that you should be able to do it as part of what they do as a transaction rather than a very complicated system of generating invoices separately, filing manually, etc. And you can also incentivize that system by providing these small businesses the credit which they don't need to deposit to the government. So those kind of incentives can also be built in. So the next level of reform actually is to bring everyone into the GST network and create a very simple GST system.
All right. Mr. Garg, thank you very much for your important, crucial piece of advice and information. I hope government is listening. The GST Council pays heed. You have the wealth of knowledge. You've worked this system. You've worked in the system, and I hope we continue to improve this system. Thanks very much. But before I let you go, and before I let our viewers go, interesting numbers that are coming in by the way of GST revenue collected in the month of July 2023, which is 1,65,000 crores, of which CGST was 29,773 crores and SGST is 37,623 crore, IGST is 85,000 crore and cess is 11,779 crores. So great numbers there, crossing the 1,65,000 mark as far as the overall GST collection for the month of July is concerned.
Second highest for the year.
Second highest so far for the year.
So as I said, those numbers are incredible. So the GST collection numbers continue to, top the charts, if I may. So that's a reality that we have to understand. Even as we try to understand how come so many fake accounts and how come so much evasion happens.
Look at the trend line there. This is the second highest since April, which is when it was 1,87,000 crores. So good news there for the government. Not sure if compliance is increasing. They continue to report more GST frauds, but overall figures are still as high as it gets.
Right.
Well, we'll move on for now. Jan Vishwas Bill, which was passed in the monsoon session of the Parliament last week, has resulted in a debate, in a controversy. While the bill aims to boost ease of living and ease of doing business by decriminalizing 42 central acts, there are concerns arising from a provision of a compromise clause in the bill. Now, the Jan Vishwas Bill amends a specific section of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 that covers a certain category of misbranded medicines. The bill passed yesterday, making Section 27D of the drug law compoundable. Now, what are compoundable offences? Compoundable offences are those that can be compromised, whereas non-compoundable offences are more serious offences in which parties cannot compromise and they involve jail term. Now, these are some of the legitimate concerns that the change will allow drug makers to get off lightly on serious charges of making substandard medicines. The government is refuting those claims. We will of course have to understand what these concerns are around Jan Vishwas Bill and how do they tinker with existing Drugs and Cosmetics Act. To talk about that, joining us on the show is Prashant Reddy, who's a senior lawyer. Mr. Reddy, thanks very much for taking time out. I want to begin by asking, what are these amendments to the Drug and Cosmetic Act that are concerning to you?
Well, the main problem is that it allows for the compounding of certain offenses, such as the prosecution of manufacturers of not of standard quality medicine. So earlier, the manufacturers of these NSQ drugs could be, the law allows for them to be punished between 1 year to 2 years, along with a fine of rupees 20,000. So what the Jan Vishwas Bill does is it makes it compoundable on the payment of a fine of rupees 5 lakhs, which basically means that if the manufacturer is ready to cough up 5 lakhs, the case will not go to trial, and he will not be required to spend any jail time for a conviction.
So that literally.
All right. Are you trying to say, therefore, that the law is tilted in favor of manufacturers?
Yes, definitely. The legislation is tilted in favor of the manufacturers. In fact, the pharmaceutical industry has been asking for such a remedy for several years now. And last year, we saw a version of this in a different bill that the government had published seeking comments. It's basically a new law to replace the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. And that almost a similar provision has worked its way into the Jan Vishwas Bill. So this provision is there in the law because the pharmaceutical industry wanted it to be in the law.
All right. And what are the implications for consumers? We understand you're saying that, this is going to make very serious offenses less punishable, compoundable, essentially meaning that there will be no jail term. But what are the implications for consumers?
Well, the risk basically is that without any serious penalties under the law, the fear is that pharmaceutical manufacturers will weaken their quality controls and not spend enough, give quality control enough attention. The government, for its part, has been trying to explain this amendment by claiming that NSQ drugs, that is not of standard quality drugs, are not a serious issue from a public health perspective, but that's simply not true, because a lot of NSQ drugs, for example, if a drug does not have enough of an antibiotic, if it's an antibiotic and the drug doesn't have enough active ingredient, it won't cure an infection. If it's a blood thinner and it doesn't have enough active ingredient, it won't have the required effect, to thin your blood. So a lot of these defects, which are classified as NSQ, are actually very serious. So they have serious health consequences. So if these are not punished seriously enough under the law, if there isn't enough of a legal deterrent, there is no reason for the pharma industry to take the law seriously.
Okay, but the government says, sir, that NSQ or non-standard quality drugs will do little harm. They're not going to kill you, they're not going to heal you. So what's the problem?
Yeah, that's what the government is trying to say, but that's completely incorrect. So if I can just explain for a minute, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act has 4 categories of offenses for drugs. So one is adulterated drugs. So these are drugs, for example, where some foreign substance has been added, like the cough syrup cases, which, where the cough syrup was adulterated with DEG. Then there are spurious drugs, which are counterfeit drugs. The third category is misbranded drugs. The fourth category is NSQ drugs. Now, in India, traditionally, adulterated and spurious drugs have been punished much more severely because that's something, which is easily understandable by the political class and the bureaucratic class. The popular conception of bad medicine is adulterated or spurious medicine. But the biggest problem in India is the fourth category, which is NSQ drugs. This is when a drug fails to meet the quality standards specified in the law. So, and these quality defects can be of, many different types. The drug may not have enough of an active ingredient. The drug may not dissolve in the body fast enough. The drug may be unstable. and which has, other problems for, in the manner in which it dissolves, etc. So basically, NSQ drugs will not kill by themselves. Like, for example, an adulterated drug will end up killing you because it's adulterated. But an NSQ drug can end up killing you because of its failure to treat the underlying disease in the body, right? So, for example, if you have, like I said, if you have a life-threatening infection, you take an antibiotic which has only 30% of the active ingredient that is mentioned on the labeling. Like, for example, you need 100 grams of an antibiotic and there's only 30 milligrams in the tablet that you have taken, and you have a life-threatening infection, chances are that you may die. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different categories of medication where a treatment failure can have serious health consequences. So the government is completely misleading everybody when they say that NSQ drugs are not a serious issue.
All right. So the problem I essentially understand is with Section 27D of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, which makes and prescribes, in fact, a punishment of 2 years and a fine of 20,000 rupees in case a drug is substandard. Now, that is going to be tweaked. The Jan Vishwas Bill will make the punishment compoundable, which means that you could escape jail term by paying as much as 5 lakh rupees. From what I'm reading, it's more like a slap on the wrist for people who end up making drugs that are adulterated, perhaps, not in line with prescriptions.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It's a slap on the wrist. And what's also important for your viewers to understand is that even Section 27D in its current form is rarely ever enforced strictly. So, for example, despite the law saying minimum imprisonment of 1 year in jail, we have seen a number of judgments from criminal courts in India where the judge has refused to send the manufacturer to jail. Instead, they sentence them to simple imprisonment till the rising of the court, which means the moment the judge gets up from the bench, they are free to go, and a fine of some rupees 20,000. So the existing law was, first of all, not enforced strictly enough, and this particular amendment is like basically a slap on the wrists.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, the government should withdraw this bill from Parliament, or at least withdraw this one particular provision in the bill.
All right. And the government's intent, of course, is to make it easy for businesses, to ensure that there are less number of businesses which are punishable. How do you reconcile with the intent? Intent, of course, was not to harm consumers, people at large, or to let pharma companies have it easy. The intent was to make it easy for these companies to operate in India.
I mean, but that's the problem, right? I mean, to what extent are you ready to allow business to operate easily in India? There has to be some kind of punishment. Making business easy does not mean throwing the entire law out. So ideally, the government should have had some kind of framework in place to decide what kind of offenses would be decriminalized. In an ideal world, any kind of act which causes harm to other citizens, either mortal bodily harm or financial harm, should be criminalized. That's
Absolutely.
Always been the basis of our criminal
Absolutely.
law.
Should be criminalized, because let's not forget, Krishna, we were talking about drugs and pharmaceutical industry. A lot of it operates on faith. India continues to be a leading exporter only on the basis of faith, despite the news of that killer cough syrup that has killed children in Gambia, Uzbekistan, the eye drop that Sri Lanka refuses to get from us, because that faith somewhere is dwindling in Indian pharmaceutical business, and we will of course have to work very hard in order to ensure compliance for pharmaceutical industries. Mr. Reddy, thanks very much, sir, for taking time out for explaining this very important story to us. But we're going to move on for now. As August kicks in, auto majors across the country have started reporting their sales number for the month of July. From Maruti Suzuki to MG Motor, Hero Motorcorp, more have shared their monthly sales data. How's the data looking like, Krishna?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I would say. M&M, for example, posting best ever SUV sales, huge rise in passenger vehicle sales from M&M. Bajaj Auto, on the other hand, witnessing a dip. You go 29% to 36,205 units. Of the 36,205 units, Shweta, a huge number of them are SUVs. M&M's SUVs are doing very well for themselves. Apart from that, tractor sales too. Tractor sales up 8% as well. Three-wheeler sales witnessing a huge 49% increase to around about 6,500 units. So M&M's month of July for the year 2023, fantastic. As you can see the numbers, all categories, three-wheelers, tractors, passenger vehicles, SUVs, the new name of the game as far as Indian passenger vehicles are concerned. By the way, passenger vehicles, by that we mean cars in this country. So it's a funny term, it's an official term for cars. So car sales, M&M's car sales driven by SUV sales. So great numbers for the month of July. Let's pull up now others that are there in the fray. Let's pull up Tata Motors. Okay, Toyota, we have Toyota, 11% sales jump for Toyota. Toyota's best ever monthly sales over there to nearly 22,000 units, 22,000 cars sold by Toyota, out of which 1,150 are exports. And also, Toyota has been on the upward swing, so to speak. They posted their best monthly sales in May with 20,410 units, and now they've beaten that to nearly 22,000 units. So Toyota, fantastic numbers for Toyota. And now we have Tata Motors. Not good numbers over there. CV sales, and by CV we mean commercial vehicles, lorries and trucks and those things. Commercial vehicle sales down 4% to about 32,900. So not very good numbers, but 11, 18, 89. So that's kind of month it has been for Tata Motors. Hyundai, quickly. Domestic sales, not too much, 0.4%. The number is not all that great for Hyundai, but then look at these numbers, 50,701 units of Hyundai cars being sold. So Hyundai continuing to do very well. Exports up nearly 20% to 16,000 units. So really good month as far as Hyundai's July auto sales is concerned. Bear in mind, we have others as well. We have MG Motors, which is just about to say 25% sales. Bear in mind, with small numbers, 5,000 odd cars being sold, but good rise. So if you're wondering, if there's any demand for MG cars, good numbers for MG cars. MG car sales up 25% for the month of July 2023. Bajaj Auto, that's the one I'm talking about, down 10%.
I'm assuming this is the two-wheeler data.
Right. Yes, or Bajaj sales overall, their overall sales, their total domestic sales data, total sales, in fact, not just domestic, total sales year on year down, exports down 18% as well. So this is a mix of both two-wheeler and three-wheeler sales, and a mixed bag as well as far as auto sales are concerned. Domestic sales too for Bajaj down 2% as well. So sales, overall sales down, domestic sales down. So not a really good month as far as Bajaj Auto is concerned. Two-wheeler, India's premier two-wheeler maker, Bajaj Auto is concerned. But there you go. We have a mixed bag. Mixed bag. But I'll have to say that you'll have to see how it goes. Just the beginning of the festive season.
Right.
The industry experts and the pundits say that you're seeing these numbers simply because it's a delayed festive season this time. Diwali is late this time around, not the early Diwali that we usually have. So the festive sales, that pickup is going to happen probably this month in August. So I'd keep my eyes peeled for the auto sales numbers for the month of August 2023 and see how that goes. That'll give you an indication of how well festive sales are taking place as far as India's auto market is concerned.
All right. So month of August there would perhaps be better for auto companies, better in the backdrop of festive sales picking up, which my colleague here believes it's going to be late because festive season is late this time around. So August will be the month to look out for. But with that, I think we're going to wrap up. Thanks very much for joining us, Krishna, with your inputs on that very interesting, important story. We will keep tracking all the auto numbers. Thanks very much for watching.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it.
It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. Streaming now.
Pakistan is actually genociding Baloch people. So being Baloch is a crime. If you are a Baloch, it means in the eyes of Pakistan, you don't have any right to live.
The Chinese and Pakistanis are colonizing the Baloch and exploiting their resources.
Baloch armed struggle will continue unless China withdraws, Pakistan military withdraws from Balochistan and give Baloch complete authority to decide for themselves.
The Baloch feel that if they don't act now, they will become marginalized.
What lies ahead for Balochistan?
Balochistan, Bangladesh 2.0, streaming now.
मैं इमरान अहमद खान नियाजी सबके दिल से हल्फ उठाता हूँ.
When Imran Khan came initially into politics, he thought his personal popularity would be sufficient for him. It didn't happen.
The retired military generals are openly saying that Imran Khan is a better choice.
Imran Khan may have bitten a bit too much, more than what he can chew.
Implosion. This and more. Streaming on world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Download now.
This is Gurugram, a fast-growing satellite city of the national capital. High-rises dot its affluent neighborhoods. It is the darling of real estate giants in northern India. Gurugram is like every other swanky Indian city, embracing development at lightning speed. But such development always comes with a hefty price.
Something like Hanuman, going away with the hill. This is what was happening.
It is going to be disastrous for Northwest India in terms of our water security, in terms of the climate change that is happening, in terms of our groundwater, in terms of pollution.
Aravallis have two major kind of threats. One is real estate and the other is mining.
The Aravallis. From Wazirabad in Delhi to Palanpur in Gujarat, the Aravallis stretch across 692 kilometers. They are estimated to be more than 1 billion years old. They act as a natural barrier and shield more than 4.6 crore people in Delhi NCR from the elements. But the Aravallis are bleeding.
इस वक्त हम हरियाणा के अरावली पहाड़ी इलाके में खड़े हैं और ये वो क्राइम सीन है जहां पर आज नूह जिले के एक डिप्टी एसपी की खनन माफियाओं ने डंपर से कुचलकर हत्या कर दी है.
We arrested 12 persons who were linked with this case, associated in different kind of activities.
The mining mafia is brazen. Even policemen are not safe. Within weeks of DSP Surinder Singh's murder, the mafia struck again. 50 men attacked cops who were conducting a raid on illegal mining operations. In the last decade, at least 50 police and government officials have been attacked.
We were on a routine checking, night checking. So we stopped them, we checked them, we found them that they are heavily overloaded and an action needed to be taken against them. So while we were checking them, one of the driver tried to fled away from the spot. And while he was doing so, he hit my official vehicle and we escaped a serious accident.
Nuh, Panchgaon and Mewat, along with Haryana, Rajasthan border, are hubs of illegal mining. 239 FIRs related to illegal mining have been registered in Haryana itself in the last 2 years. We travel to Panchgaon, the heart of the illegal mining operations. Every single house in its dusty streets stands on a 3-meter plinth made of quartz stone, illegally mined from the Aravalis. As we move from the foothills towards the ranges, we notice giant craters that have replaced hillocks. These depressions are now filled with water. What's driving such unabated mining in the area?
हर दिन नहीं होता, जब जरूरत होती है जी, कोई रोज तो घर बना नहीं पाता, तो महीने में 6 महीने में जब भी जरूरत होती है 1-2 गाड़ी भर के ले जाते हैं, और थोड़ी बहुत जरूरत होती है तो थोड़ा बहुत बेच भी देते हैं, 1000-2000, इसको जिसके पास कुछ साधन नहीं है उसको ले जाके दे भी देते हैं.
That may just be the partial truth. The mining mafia runs like a well-oiled machine. We did some digging of our own.
और कहाँ से आती है?
ये इस भरतपुर से आती है.
ओके, जहाँ पे अरावलीज है?
हाँ, अरावलीज.
ये कैसे होता है वहाँ?
रात में जैसे माइनिंग करते हैं, हाँ, बोल्डर निकाल लेते हैं, उसमें दिन में वो भर देते हैं, मिट्टी को भर देते हैं. मिट्टी भरने के बाद में समतल हो गया, किसी को नहीं पता यहाँ क्या हुआ है, ठीक है जी, और ट्रकों में लोड करके भेज देते हैं.
It is the bureaucrat who guide or misguide the politician to telling them that how these laws can be violated without attracting punishment. Because they will write such word, use such word, language or ignore in such a way that there is no penalty.
Illegal mining has left 12 gaps in the Aravali. These gaps channel sand towards the capital. The process is called desertification. In 2017, the Wildlife Institute of India detected sand dunes in Harchandpur village, 20 kilometers from Gurugram. The village is 60 kilometers from Delhi. If the plunder of the Aravalis continues, the Thar Desert could move closer to the national capital. A 2018 report by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India said 25% of the Aravalis were illegally mined between 2011 and 2017. This has led to a spike in bronchitis and asthma in Rajasthan. More than 4,000 people have been affected by an incurable lung disease called silicosis. 449 people have died. In 2018, the Supreme Court was hearing a case on illegal mining. Justice Madan Lokur was startled with what he heard.
Hillocks have completely disappeared from the face of the earth because of this illegal mining, which is shocking. And the state of Rajasthan filed a response to the report, and they did not deny.
Why do you think there had been no real impact on the ground?
Unless the government realizes, unless the executive realizes, we are going to face this kind of a problem.
The Aravali story is more than just greed. It's also a failure of urban planning. The National Capital Regional Planning Boards build sustainable plans for the NCR and 25 districts of Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. The board has a draft plan which will serve as a roadmap